The gospel reading is from the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 24, verses 36 to 48. While Jesus' disciples were talking about what had happened, Jesus appeared and greeted them. They were frightened and terrified because they thought they had seen a ghost. But Jesus said, "Why are you frightened? Why do you doubt? Look at my hands and my feet and see who I am. Touch me and find out yourselves. Ghosts don't have flesh and bones as you see I have." After this, he showed them his hands and feet. The disciples were so glad and amazed that they could not believe it. Jesus asked them, "Do you have something to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish. He took it and ate as they watched. Jesus said to them, "While I was with you, I told you everything written about me in the law of Moses. The books of the prophets and the Psalms had to happen." Then he helped them understand the scriptures. He told them, "The scriptures say that Messiah must suffer. Then 3 days later, he will rise from death. They also say that all the people of every nation must be told my name to turn to God, and in order to be forgiven. So beginning in Jerusalem, you must tell everything that has happened." The Emmaus Heart Road. The Emmaus Heart. This interesting passage is sandwiched between Luke's account of Jesus' resurrection and Jesus appearing to the disciples on the Emmaus Road and with Jesus' ascension. I will briefly review the Emmaus Road encounter where Jesus joins two disciples. Using the Torah and the writings of the prophet, Moses and the prophets, Jesus explains to the disciples the real role of the promised Messiah. Our pandemic experience might feel to some people kind of like that Emmaus Road. We are so confused by the loss that we've experienced during this pandemic that we do not realize that the Spirit of the risen Christ is walking with us on the road of loss, that we are not alone in this difficult time. John Geo is currently serving as the Chancellor of Canonical Affairs and the Vicar General for the Diocese of Orlando. He gave a sermon that was broadcast on Catholic television in Central Florida. In his sermon, he indicates the road to Emmaus is located in our hearts. The road to Emmaus is that time when you have the hardest time believing. The road to Emmaus is when you have those difficult moments where we say, "I'm out of here." He observes that we are more likely to feel this way when life is not going the way we expected it to go. The encounter in the room is recorded in the Gospel of Luke, probably because it helps establish the reality of the resurrection, the need for the cross, the urgency of the task, and the power of God. Jesus was crucified and died. Jesus' followers were overcome with fear, anger, grief. They were having a hard time believing. They could neither comprehend Jesus' messianic role nor the fact that Jesus was alive. Those in the room may have been searching for proof, for something that could comfort them. Jesus supplied the proof they needed. Then Jesus taught them from the scriptures, showing it was necessary for the Messiah to suffer and to rise from the dead on the third day. Jesus also explains that through him, the Messiah, comes forgiveness. He helped shift their theology. Many people are spiritually uncertain and troubled. They live with fear of an angry, harsh, judgmental God. On an intellectual level, they get the fact that God is loving. But, like the disciples in the Emmaus Road, fear keeps them from recognizing the presence of God's kingdom when it's right beside them. Because of the hearts of those in the room who are still on the Emmaus Road, I've titled this reflection, The Emmaus Road Heart. The Emmaus Road heart is seen when Christians want other people to live in such a way that they can prove that they are Christians by the way they act, walk, talk, and worship. So we put people to the test. My grade 12 year was spent in a religious boarding academy. Then I progressed to a Christian college. The expectations of how Christian young people were supposed to act were really something. No long hair. And this was during the late 1970s and early 1980s. Almost all young males were wearing long hair. Our hair could not touch our collars, and it could not cover our earlobes. No jeans or t-shirts. We could wear gyms and t-shirts in the gym, or if we were doing some kind of manual work on campus, but the rest of the time, no. We had to wear button-up shirts, dress pants, or corduroy pants. No ripped or torn clothing, no makeup and jewelry. Females could be expected to have their dresses measured to make sure they were the correct length. When I was in grade 12, we were expected to have 11 devotions a week in our dormitory, 4 church services, and a chapel attendance. That was a grand total of 16 religious services every week. It was slightly better when I was in college. We were down to an expected 6 devotions a week in the dormitory, 4 services in church, and a chapel attendance. That was 11 services a week. Radios, stereos, and TVs were not allowed at all in the academy. At college level, radios and stereos were okay as long as they were played so quietly that no one outside your room could hear. No rock, no Christian rock, nothing with a strong beat was really to be allowed. Zooming forward a few years, I noticed recently a Christian boarding school that had the following standards of behavior for their students. No reading science fiction, minimum dress lengths, pants couldn't be too tight or too loose, pants are not to have holes, underwear is not to be seen, no hats, no dark glasses in buildings, no bandanas can be worn around your head, no clothing with messages about alcohol, tobacco, sex, or occultism, no tank tops or sleeveless tops. These rules, well, they're largely cultural, but they were used, defined, and still are used to define Christian behavior. Cultural elements of Christianity can pose a problem in our understanding of the kingdom of God. Some of the rules defining Christian behavior are dated, seemingly fixed about 2 generations ago. Will Willimon is a professor at Duke Divinity School. He makes the point that Jesus is a body in motion, seemingly ahead of the disciples. He observes there's something about humanity that's uncomfortable with the risen Christ in motion. Willem continues, we want to fix Christ, stabilize Christ, to take his presence and define it and confine it. And I believe we've confined Christ to doctrine, to specific expressions of Christian life. We've confined Christ to the point where we struggle to see Christ working and living in the lives of women, non-binary people, LGBT plus people, and the lives of people with olive, brown, or black skin. The risen Christ is too big, too loving, too expansive to fit our definitions of white, male, European Christianity. We should have expected this kind of expansiveness from Christ. After all, Jesus was a brown-skinned, radical Jewish man. As wonderful as the ancient creeds are and the old doctrines of the church, the risen Christ is much bigger than those things. Christ is big enough to work through those we find unsettling because of their race, their ethnicity, their abilities, their socioeconomic background, their religion, their gender expression, political affiliation, occupation, and sexuality. Christ is telling us that it's time to unbolt the pews in the church we've been sitting on. It's time for us to grab our light folding chairs and follow the risen Christ. Our Christ, the risen Christ, is prepared to bring those who are in rooms closed by fears and hurt of the Emmaus Road heart to McDougall United Church. Christ is bringing them to us and is inviting them to keep up with us. Inviting us, I should say, to keep up with them and to keep up with him as he moves in the lives of Emmaus Road hearts.